At this point in our program, it gives me great honor to introduce a woman that actually does not need any introductions. Our medical director, Dr. Anna Belcheva, is coming up to the podium. She is going to speak a few words and actually introduce our guest speaker for the day. So, Anna.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you. Okay, let's try to turn this into a positive event and remember why we're here. We do this event every year, and up until now, we've always had speakers who either had gone through battling cancer and had survived, or were currently going through treatment and sharing their story graciously. This year, we decided to put a little different twist on it and to look at it from the perspective of someone who is caring for a loved one with cancer and what they have to sacrifice and what they have to give up and how it enriches them and really focus on their experience. We often forget the emotional and physical hardship that our patients' caregivers go through. And I became even more acutely aware of that hardship when I met William and Crystal Rapson. Crystal is here with us today, and she's our featured speaker. Her husband, William, battled cancer of the esophagus for about 15 months and eventually passed away. Crystal, his wife, was by his side during every step of his journey. She was his love, his nurse, his best friend, and as he and I jokingly used to say to her, she became Dr. Crystal because she did her research and knew more than me about every possible treatment for esophageal cancer while he battled his battle. He was, as far as I'm concerned, a brilliant man. He was a very successful businessman and never gave up, continued to exercise until about, 2-3 weeks before he passed away, and always found the time, the energy, and the desire to even give me good advice. And I found myself, even after he was gone, asking Crystal, what would William tell me to do in this situation? So needless to say, Crystal and I have become friends, and I'm very, very honored to introduce her today.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here today. And if you cannot understand me from the echo or I'm speaking too loudly, just raise your hand, anyone, and I'll try to adjust. My husband talked about, when he got cancer, he talked about being a good example to the ones that he felt he was leaving behind. And I am one of those people that he left a good example for. And so today I'm here to run with it. I'm not a professional speaker. I'm just a wife. I was a caregiver. And I'm very grateful that you allowed me to be here today. Thank you to Anna Belcheva for the introduction about William and about me. And I hope that I did live up to the things that you said. Dr. Belcheva was the chosen one. And by that, I mean, as a very successful businessman, when my husband was diagnosed with cancer, he decided to interview pretty much all the doctors in Houston, Texas, until he decided which one was going to be his. So she was handpicked for the job and was the doctor who cared for him throughout his journey. The day we met her, we got into the car, and he looked at me and said, well, what do you think? And I said, I really liked her because I was a more sentimental, emotional one. And he said, yeah, I think she's the one. And I said, why do you say that? Well, he said, well, first of all, she's a woman. He liked smart women. But she was the one that we chose, and we were very grateful to have her by our side through the journey, which is a very important part of the cancer journey, as the people that you choose to surround yourself with. And I don't think that there are any bad doctors, but I think finding one that fits your personality and your expectations is a really important part of the journey. I also wanted to say thank you to Methodist Hospital, Willowbrook here, the administration, the infusion center, all the wonderful people who helped care for William, and the other professionals that make this the best place for cancer patients. This is the best choice, and this was the choice for our cancer. I want to start by telling you a little bit about the cancer experience from day one by giving you an analogy that I've come up with, and it seems to fit with everyone I've talked to. Imagine if someone walked through the door right now tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Come with me," walked you downstairs and put you in a car, drove you to Intercontinental Airport, dropped you off at the International Terminal, and by the way, you don't have a choice whether you go with them or not. You have to go. They drop you off at the International Terminal with a confirmation number and tell you to go to the kiosk and put the number in. You have no luggage. You didn't even get to take your purse with you if you have a purse. And you're getting on a plane to Japan. And this analogy only works if you haven't been to Japan. So if you have been to Japan, you need to think of another place. You're going to Japan, and on this 14-hour flight to Japan, which is a pretty long time to be on an airplane, you're thinking about what you're going to do when you get to Japan, because you don't know anyone in Japan. You don't have a job in Japan. You don't have a place to stay. This person didn't give you any of that stuff. So you arrive at the airport in Japan and suddenly realize, besides all that, you don't speak Japanese. What do? That's how I felt and William felt when we heard, "I'm sorry, you have adenocarcinoma of the gastroesophageal junction." What? We didn't understand what that meant. And so for me, Dr. Belcheva mentioned that I researched and knew a lot. That's how I dealt with my stress. I dealt with stress by staying up till 4 a.m. reading about all the treatments, all the possibilities, and by the time we got about halfway through our journey, I could speak Japanese, and it was very useful. And by the way, I am in the process of documenting all of this for newly diagnosed patients, because I think it would be helpful to have a glossary of terms and understanding when someone gets put on an airplane to Japan and dropped off. So that was the initial reaction. I said earlier, our cancer, our choice for our cancer. And the reason that I said our cancer, because I have not been diagnosed with cancer, was that we both had a job. And we talked a little bit about this early on, and he said his job was to carry the tumors, and my job was to support him, and sometimes I carried him. He definitely had the harder job. It was more difficult, and I can say that for me, it was a huge honor to be his wife. And it was a bigger honor to be the person to hold his hand through the doctor's appointments, the treatments, the scans, the calls with the insurance company. And I felt very privileged to be the one who got to do all of that. If he were here, he would tell you that he didn't need a hand. He didn't need someone to hold his hand. But I kind of think he liked it. On one visit to Dr. Belcheva's office, I wasn't feeling very well. And that morning we woke up to go to the doctor, and I always drove. We had a Toyota Sequoia. It was just the two of us, big car. He sat in the back seat with the DVD player going, and I was the chauffeur. And this day I didn't feel very well. So when he came out to get in the car, I was sitting at the dining room table, and I had a pretty significant pain in my abdomen, but I didn't say anything. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, nothing's wrong, I'm fine." And we got in the car, and the pain got worse, and I was driving down 249, and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I just have a little stomach ache." And so we got to Dr. Belcheva's office, and he immediately marched up to the receptionist and said, "We need a doctor. There's something wrong." To which Christine came out very quickly and said, "What's going on?" And I said, "I just have this little pain here." And he said, "She can barely walk. Fix her." So Christine took us back, and she triaged me, and she got a wheelchair, and she took me down to the emergency room. And that was the only appointment I ever missed. And so I was in the emergency room, and they put me on morphine. And so here comes William after his appointment. And he said, "What's going on here?" And I said, "Well, they took me for a CAT scan, and the doctor's doing an exam, and I'm feeling a little better now. They think it's a kidney stone." And he said, "Well, how much longer do you think it's going to be? Because I need to eat, and I need my medicine." And I said, "Well, honey, I'm not really sure." And he said, "It's a really good thing I'm the one with cancer." And I said, "Oh, yes, it is." So we got out of there pretty quickly. I went home. I actually passed the kidney stone. And so whether you've had one or you've heard about them, they're pretty rough. They're nothing like cancer. I knew he had the harder job. People talk about how hard cancer is. It's hard on a patient. It's hard on a family. But I'm not here to tell you about that because you already know. Instead, I'm here to talk about something that the rest of the world can't see, something unique to those of us in this room and others like us. I want to tell you about the blessings of cancer. In March of 2014, 6 months after William was diagnosed, 12 months of oxaliplatin, 5-FU, and about 4 other things, we were sitting outside a pizza place. And I took out my phone, and I asked him if I could ask him a few questions. And I push record on the video camera, and I asked him his favorite color, his favorite song, his favorite thing in life. The color was green, the song was by CCR, and his favorite thing in life, he said, was me. He was a smart man. These are things we hadn't talked about before. And I also asked him, William, what one thing would you change about yourself if you could change anything? His answer was profound, and it changed my life, and it changed my perspective forever. He said, nothing. This was a man who 6 months earlier had been told he only had 6 months to live. He said to me daily after 6 months passed that he was on borrowed time. And he said he would change nothing? Hello, cancer. That is because I realized in our lives, cancer had become a gift. It had given us new friendships with fellow patients, with caregivers, with doctors, with nurses. We began to connect with others in an altruistic, genuine way, in a way we had not done before. Cancer gave us laser focus. We had an intensity in everything we did, including our relationships. We had a determination that was on fire, and nothing could quench that fire. And we had a purpose that we were passionate about. That purpose was not curing cancer. That purpose was living life to its fullest, taking what we had and making the best of it, and loving others like we had never loved before. When the doctor came in September of 2013, and he was in a hospital in Houston for a scope because he was having pain, and they diagnosed him, I looked at the doctor and I said, no, you're wrong. It has to be something else. This is impossible. This was not in our plan. Except it wasn't impossible. And we spent the next 15 months having an impossible life that taught us impossible challenges bring other things you never realized were possible. We spent a lot of time hugging and laughing and saying, I love you, and we traveled. We took an impossible trip. It was impossibly expensive, it was impossibly impractical, and it was impossibly too much work, except it wasn't. We coordinated the doctors here to talk to the doctors there, to have the treatments there, and we lived. We drove in the car, him sitting in the back seat, me driving, the DVD players going all the way to the West Coast. We took a tour up the coast. We stayed on the beach in Oregon for a month. We drove to Alaska. We got on a ship, and we went over and went fishing for salmon. We went horseback riding. We couldn't hike. He was too sick. We had the salmon shipped home that we caught there so we could have them on his birthday in August after we returned. And when we got home, he said to me the sweetest words I think I've ever heard. He said, thank you. That would have been impossible without you. And I realized again, cancer made things possible that weren't already. Cancer had been a blessing that showed us this. It brought out the strength in both of us and in those around us, and it brought out the best of everything we already had, but we hadn't noticed before. In that way, cancer was a blessing that taught us how to relax. William said he never would have slowed down at work. He lost a friend during that time who was suddenly had a heart attack, and he looked at me, and as he was crying, he said, "I'm the lucky one." I still hear these words when life gets busy, but guess what I do now? I slow down and I live, because that's what William taught me. Cancer gave us something nothing can ever take away. It gave us life and a much-needed perspective shift. It gave us new views on family, on hardships, on legacy, on love, on our purpose here on this earth. This kind of perspective that I'm still carrying with me today is only possible against the backdrop of an impossible challenge. Impossible. Yes, it was, until we realized it wasn't. Cancer helped us embrace every minute, and we did not waste a single one of them. We became multitaskers. Even in the infusion center for 6 to 8 hours, we talked, we laughed, we cried, we made videos. And today, I not only have those memories, I also have a strength and a confidence that I can do anything, including stand here with my knees knocking, speaking to you. As I wrap up, I'd like to share with you Webster's definition of a survivor. It's a person who continues to live after an accident, an illness, or a war. By that definition, William is here with us today and is also a survivor. This is true because he continues to live in our story, in the memory of many others, and in my heart. In fact, Heather and I were talking earlier about people who have received a cancer diagnosis. They're all survivors. They survived that moment where someone told them they had cancer. To those of you who are here today as someone who has or is kicking cancer in the rear end, you are not only survivors, but you are also my heroes. To those in the medical field who tirelessly care for their patients, who are tirelessly working for a cure, you are also my heroes. To those who are caring for someone or who've cared for someone with cancer, you too qualify as heroes. And together we make up an army of heroes, a very distinguished group. We are survivors. Together we can unite and grow from these trials we have been through. And then we can take that to the world and teach others our secret. Our secret is we know what it truly means to live. In closing, I'd like to leave you with a poem you may have seen hanging in a doctor's office or a clinic, or perhaps someone who cares about you shared it in encouragement. It's called What Cancer Cannot Do by Dr. Robert L. Lynn, and it sums up nicely what those who have been through cancer already know. Cancer is so limited. It cannot cripple love. It cannot shatter hope. It cannot corrode faith. It cannot eat away peace. It cannot destroy confidence. It cannot kill friendship. It cannot shut out memories. It cannot silence courage. It cannot reduce eternal life. And it cannot quench the spirit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Isn't she just fabulous? Just fabulous. And so we have a few memories now that we would like to share, and please take your seats again. We do have some video that we would like for you to share, and it's really about the journey that both Crystal and William had. And so please enjoy some time. We're going to cue up the video.
I've been very fortunate in my life, and I've had my little ups and downs like everybody, but I do believe it's your choice whether you look at the glass as being half full or half empty, regardless of where you are in life. And there's just to me, no value in looking at the downside when you always have a lot to be grateful for.
I spent most of the next days looking at the x-rays.
You know, I think one of the greatest joys in life is being able to feel like you understand everything. You know, seeking clarity in life, seeking an understanding of why things happen. Because the more that you understand, the less stressful you can make your life. Because stress for a lot of people is about uncertainty.
You try to celebrate the upside. You try to show a good example to those you leave behind, how they should try to view life in that way, and that you appreciate the contribution that they've all made to your life, and hopefully they'll take that and run with it.
Well, once again, if we could give just a phenomenal round of applause for Crystal. And just want to thank each of you for being in the surroundings today and for your acts, whether you are the patient or you are the caregiver, for your acts that enable survivorship. At this point in the program, we have some desserts, and we are ready also to go downstairs for the finale of our event. Please, it's very warm outside, so if you do have any health conditions, we don't want you to be out in the sun, but we do have a finale closing to our program where we will let hope soar, and we do have a balloon release downstairs. So please, you're welcome to stay inside, but for those of you that would like to celebrate in the balloon release, we are ready to go ahead and do that as well. And once again, thank you for joining us in our Cancer Survivors Day, and once again, thank you again to Crystal. Appreciate your testimony.